So boy oh boy do we have some big news today that came out from Nvidia. So it's been about 2 months since Nvidia came out and actually revised for Q4 for their guidance, and they lowered their guidance due to weak outlook for Q4. This was a drastic revision back in November, and they dropped their guidance from around $3.4 billion for revenue to around $2.7 billion for revenue, which is about a 20% reduction. They also stated in that release that this prediction could fluctuate around 2% or so that number isn't really set in stone. So this of course caused the stock to dip to lows that we haven't seen in quite a while, and we actually saw prices in the 120s for Nvidia, which is absolutely insane. Well, the bad news unfortunately continues because this morning Nvidia's CEO came out and once again revised lower for guidance. So we're gonna get into that right now, but guys, if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Don't forget to drop a huge like on this video as well. Let's try to get 100 likes on this video. And also let me know in the comment section down below if you're an Nvidia stock shareholder. I'm really curious to see how many of you are. So like I said, the CEO has come out and revised guidance again for Q4 2018. And this time they've lowered it from 2.7 billion to 2.2 billion. So this makes it a 18.5% reduction from the 2.7 billion, which is much more than the 2% that they were predicting initially. And of course, when looking at the original number that they set for guidance last year, which was 3.4 billion, this is a 35% reduction from that. So now when looking at this and now looking at this new revised guidance, it's all starting to make sense why Nvidia stock dropped so drastically at the tail end there of 2018. Guys, from its highs, you can see here that the stock is down almost 60%. And at first, with the revision in guidance in November, I thought the move was an overreaction really from the market. But now with the revised guidance lower again, it may be an exaggerated move, yes, but I think it's a more reasonable move now. When you look at Nvidia from a fundamental level though, like the key facts like the PE and all that kind of stuff, it's a very attractive valuation for what the company does and how much they plan to grow over the next, say, 5-10 years. They have a PE currently under 20, which is very attractive. And this is actually much lower than other companies which don't grow nearly as fast as a company like Nvidia. However, the company does have a few things going against it as we enter 2019, and these things started to become more relevant in 2018, tail end 2018. So let's talk about those things right now. The first, of course, which we have to address is what the CEO stated in this revised letter, where they said that China is a concern. And really, China has been the culprit for many American companies either missing on their earnings or revising lower on their guidance. Even companies like Apple had to revise lower because of China. However, the real question that you need to ask yourself as an investor is, do you see these issues and weakness in China continuing over the longer term, say over the next 3 to 5 years? So 3 to 5 years is kind of my holding time for Nvidia and actually most of my stocks in my portfolio. And if you ask me where do I see Nvidia in 3 to 5 years, I think that the stock will be much higher. I think it would have adjusted for all of this weakness in China, and I think we would be back on track to a very strong growth company. Do I think that a price tag of $130 per share for a stock like Nvidia is undervalued? Absolutely. And because Nvidia is a leader in things like automation and self-driving, AI, all that kind of stuff, I think that they're in a great position to succeed over the longer term, and I think the market is really undervaluing this company and its potential for the long term. And of course, this is true as long as the fad of self-driving, AI, and automation, all that kind of stuff doesn't die out in the next few years. So the other big thing pulling Nvidia down, which we have to address here, is the cyclicality nature of semiconductor stocks. So typically semiconductor stocks behave in a more cyclical nature. So they're up for a few years and they're down for a few years and they're back up and so on and so forth. And this is because semiconductor stocks are almost traded like a commodity. And if you go out there and look at some semiconductor stocks, you can see that they're trading at extremely low price to earnings ratios, but the price of the stock is still somewhere like 50-60% lower from its highs. That's because with things like memory prices dropping, these companies won't earn as much and then investors aren't as excited to invest in these companies. A perfect example of this is Micron, which you can take a look at the chart here and you can see that it's down almost 50% from its highs, at one point even higher than 50%, even though they're posting record earnings in the last year. And this is just the nature of the industry, and it's something you have to accept when you're investing in stocks in the semiconductor space. When you have stocks like Micron, Applied Materials, and even Lam Research pulling down the whole sector because of their cyclical nature, Nvidia is in that basket and it's going to get pulled down as well. But in my opinion, I believe this is not really a concern when you're looking 3 to 5 years out. And like I mentioned, the big driver for this, in my opinion, will be self-driving cars. And as more manufacturers implement this into their cars, they're going to look at Nvidia and companies like Nvidia, I think most likely Nvidia because they're the leaders in that space, to buy their chips and put it into their cars. And the other big thing I see happening in the next few years is 5G. I mentioned that before. I think that's where Apple is going to shine. And I also think that's where a lot of semiconductor stocks are going to shine because of that. So when people go out and they want to buy new 5G phones, a lot of these semiconductor companies are going to see a huge ramp up in sales again, and prices will most likely start to climb once again. And I believe both of these things will come to fruition over the next 3 to 5 years, maybe even sooner, but this is kind of the time frame that I'm looking at for these stocks, especially Nvidia. So at this point, you may be wondering, is Nvidia stock still a buy? Well, like I said, the valuation in my opinion is very attractive, it's very reasonable, but I still think the stock has more room to fall. They've already lowered their guidance twice, and this pretty much means that the price movement is more or less factored into the stock or priced into the stock now for the upcoming earnings report. However, in my opinion, I think the stock will continue to trickle off over the next few months or so, maybe even continue trickling off throughout 2019 into 2020. But I think that's where the opportunity for Nvidia lies. When you see a company like Nvidia trading at such low prices, it's very hard to resist picking up some shares and just averaging into your position over time. I think that we could even see prices as low as $100 per share, and I covered that in a video which I'll link up here, so check that out if you haven't. And it wouldn't surprise me even if we dip a little below $100 per share in the 90s or so, just because of all the things going against Nvidia like we discussed here in 2019. So really, in conclusion, I don't think that 2019 will be a strong year for Nvidia stock or most semiconductor stocks in general. I believe we're maybe bottoming out from the lower end of the cycle here, maybe towards the end of 2019, maybe even into 2020. Like I said, 5G I think will be the first thing that ramps things up once again. But I think that 2019 will be a perfect year for investors to go in and build a strong, large position in a stock like Nvidia. So once again, guys, I'd be really curious to find out if you're an investor in Nvidia. Comment that down below and let me know. Let me know what your price prediction is for the stock as well by the end of 2019, and we can always come back and revisit this video in 2020. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something from this video. Don't forget to invest positively, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.